This session is called Buying Power, Where to Spend Your Tech Budget and Why. We're going to discuss the technological, financial and operational challenges that are focusing our panel's minds and the minds, hopefully, of the wider industry at the moment, shed some light on how this may impact on their purchasing or decision-making generally, and see how this might be reflected at IBC over the next couple of days. Joining me to do that is Matt McDonald, Warner Brothers Discovery Group, SVP, EMEA Broadcast Services. Matt's on the end. Welcome to you, Matt. Tom
Hello.
Giles, IMG Director of Engineering, and John Guntenaar, NEP Europe CTO. Welcome to you all. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start by briefly reflecting on a little bit of what Rebecca was talking about before. There was a slide in there talking about vendors focusing on tiers, as mentioned, of production tools for multiple endpoints, less developer-heavy tech that can be used with fewer resources, and cheap SaaS solutions for video that can be delivered at scale. Just briefly, as people that are maybe vendors are aiming their stuff at, Tom, did that ring true to you, that slide?
Does anyone know how many tiers there are? Because that's always an interesting start.
Should we not do that now?
I think from my point of view, the tier one project is fine, and I get that. And I think as we as we go lower down, as a technologist and also a consumer of lower tiered content, I support a football team that are in the 5th tier of English football. When I pay my £10 to consume that content, it still needs to work. I've still paid money to consume it, and I need that stream to be consistent. It needs to be high quality. There is still a replay in there. There's graphics in there. So whilst there is clearly a higher tiered model, the model that I still want to consume has to be reliable and has to stay there.
You mentioned less developer-heavy tech as well. It feels like we're going the other way, doesn't it, Matt?
Yeah, I think that's. I think it's a good aspiration. I think it's something we all need to work on. But certainly, as we see the move to software more and more, we're seeing more and more need for SI, more and more need for software engineers. So I think the idea of plug and play and less developer-heavy is good. I think that's where we should be going. But I think in this cloud world, software-based world, we've almost gone backwards, and we've gone into a world where developers are required.
Interesting. John, anything you want to add on that before we move on to your individual challenges?
So something that we see very often is that the people that then own the platforms, they want to have a unique touch point with basically their audience. So they want to own the app. They don't want something that's vanilla. They want it to be specific. So yes, you have a lot of services, cloud services that are generic and maybe low code, but very often we see they start low code, and then it's like, we need to be different, right? Because it's our unique way to interact with our clients. So then the developers come, and you're back at the beginning again.
Absolutely. So I'm going to stick with you, John, if that's okay. We're going to look at some of your individual challenges. This is for you as a CTO, but also for NEP. One of the things that you're very keen to explore and develop further is virtualization and the move to software. And we're going to talk, because we're very on the edge of tech here, about fridges. Explain why.
So we see, and we are very much working on the transition from hardware to software. So from bespoke hardware, switchers, multi-viewers, audio processing, etc., that is moving towards software-based models running on COTS hardware, so standard servers, where until now, I was going to say the old days, but until now, manufacturers would have bespoke hardware, which is required because there are interfaces that are non-native to the IT world, SDI, AES, LTC, etc. But now with the world moving towards 2110 and more the IP way of working, you are getting into an area where those are formats that run natively on a computer, because you put a network card in with fiber and you just run all the signals over it. And 2110 on those, the big boxes, very often, it's the board that's in there, in that enclosure with FPGAs, etc., but now only a single connector. So you don't need all that hardware anymore, and in the end, there's some form of software running onto it. And if we can run it on a standard computer, that opens up a whole variety of new models, where the manufacturers, they don't need to own the factory, they don't need to own the assembly line, they don't need to own the QA, etc. They become software suppliers, and that opens up new models. So this is something that we are working on heavily to develop that platform where we are mixing and matching technology from various providers, for our clients, because our clients, they want choice. They want, okay, I want this brand vision mixer, I want this brand replay machine, I want this brand, etc., etc. And some they don't care, right? And some are, they very much care. And we want to mix and match all those together. And I phrase that as the power of choice, and that's what we want to deliver to our clients, but with all the new models attached to it.
And this all goes in one big fridge.
In the end, if the code is running on my fridge or your fridge, it doesn't really matter, right? In the end, there is processing, and when processing becomes generic, similar like, look at the hyperscalers, they have data centers with racks and racks and racks, all with standard servers. And then you run your VM in, one of the hyperscalers, and you don't know if it's running there or there or there, it's just there. So then you run your software on someone else's fridge, and I think we're heading in a similar direction.
Hence the fridge analogy. Would this allow you to scale up and scale down by event then, which you, in an easier way, shall we say, than you can do currently?
So with this new model, there are also new licensing models. And just think about switchers for a second. You would buy, a big switcher, put all the MEs in there, and you would have, a 9 ME switcher that you're not using all the time. And also looking at sports, sports is very heavy in the weekend and not so much during the week. So if you can go to a model where it's, okay, we have the fridges, which are less expensive than, the bespoke hardware, then the cost is in the software. And it's like, okay, do you have a 4 ME show? Fine, this is what you pay. Do you have a 6 ME show? This is what you pay. And then you can move towards more event-based pricing, and you're actually, paying for what you're using, and that model becomes more transparent.
So that brings us to CapEx versus OpEx. Is that correct?
It does, because, of course, the fridges, you can probably rent them, right? So you can have that as OpEx. But, you would say in normal conditions, those would be capitalized. But then it is, if you move into the event-based pricing model, where per event you're just paying for the software license, and multiple vendors have multiple models, right? Either way, pay as you go, or pay as you use, or a credit-based system, or et cetera, you can get a more transparent model, I think, is the best way to put it,
yep.
Where it's not that the price of the event is based on, how much can I utilize that asset during a year or during the write-off period. It is, how much am I actually using it, and you can forward those costs to the client.
So now I'm going to bring in Tom and Matt. So CapEx versus OpEx. I write this all the time on the website. We hear this all the time. It's the new standard. We all want to just do OpEx. Is that true, gents, or do we really need more of a choice? We're talking about buying things here. So do you want to spend money up front?
Yeah.
Do you want to spend money every month?
So we will still buy hardware, and we still do buy hardware, but obviously the manufacturers themselves don't like one big spike. They prefer us to spend money consistently over a period of time. It helps their own revenue models. With that, obviously all these licenses come out. I think sometimes where we've had a bit of consolidation of lots of manufacturers, it does feel like you can be penalised for wanting the best product that might not be with a specific manufacturer. So if I've got a load of licenses sat on a specific manufacturer's range and I want to bring in another manufacturer's product because it's the best in class for that particular service, then the licenses to house it in a different ecosystem seem to cost more than if it was their own version of that product. So that can be quite challenging for us. It's still a license, it's still OpEx, it's still part of the whole thing. I think what we have to try and work out is how we represent all of that in rate cards and how then we can charge it to our relevant clientele so that we're covering our costs essentially. It is a real challenge that, and we do struggle sometimes.
Matt, how would you see this particular conversation? Do you like the idea of it all being monthly?
I'm trying to steer away from a financial treatment at 4 o'clock in Amsterdam.
They've had coffee.
Financial treatment lecture. I think I'm struggling. I'm stretching the metaphor. Maybe I think I've got a lot of fridges. Is what I'm thinking.
Good.
So we have a massive 2110 network across Europe, built on 2 data centers, built in London, supports 10 different production locations. And that's what underpinned the whole Olympics and underpins TNT Sports in the UK and underpins Eurosport, just BAU. That model is, it's our virtualized hardware, it's our virtual VMs sitting on our hardware in our data centers, and that is kind of the machine, and it's kind of it's a sunk cost. What we're seeing more and more is the move to pure software. So that gives a couple of advantages. So number one, we want to scale up with a new PCR. We can do that with a software-based PCR now. We're using, with lots of experience with pure cloud PCRs, and we've taken that experience and now scaling up our 2110 network with more software-based PCRs. And then the other side of it is just pure remote production opportunity, and using that same model, whether it be public cloud or VMworld to virtualized world to that was a Freudian slip. Moving to a world where it is more spin up, spin down. So sorry, the short answer to your question is, I think we've got a machine that services both our kind of linear model, our kind of all of our Eurosport channels and our other channels that are there all of the time, and I think that suits a CapEx model. I think where we spin up and spin down more and more in production, we want that cost transparency and the ability to spin up and spin down. Obviously, we need the vendor models to work with that to make that a success.
You touched on remote production. A lot of this to do with remote. Do you want to do more remote production at Warner Brothers Discover? And if you do, what's that road look like?
We do a lot of remote production today. I think most of what we do is remote production today. I think if you look across Europe, Eurosport, we just did the Olympics in 47 markets, 19 languages. It was a complete remote production. All of our galleries were across Europe, or we had our main studios. You probably heard from Scott earlier today. You'll know more than me. I managed to miss it because I was stuck on a Heathrow runway with a lightning storm. But yeah, so we built 7 main studios, or 4 main studios, 3 main stand-up positions, and we had lots and lots of mobile cameras all around Paris. That was all remotely managed using our kind of BAU setup in our sports platform that we call it. So that's the 2 main hubs in London and Paris, and the other 8 other locations. So we do an enormous amount of remote today. I think with TNT, we're doing a lot of remote. Some of our productions are full cloud remote, things like Serie A. I think increasingly with host broadcasting, we're looking to see how far we can push it. Can we take the 18 cameras, 22 cameras, 30 cameras and move into that world? And I think that's what's going to be interesting in this IBC, is sort of understanding with the sort of wave of technology, all the technologies moving in the right direction, the network standards, the processing power, the cloud, everything's going the right way, but we're not quite there yet. So it's going to be interesting to see how far we can get. And there's lots of clever people in this room, I know, working on this problem as we speak.
Thank you. Tom, what's focusing your mind at the moment? And don't say beer that you can have in an hour's time. Technologically speaking, at IMG, what's focusing your mind?
I think we have quite a large 2110 infrastructure. I think a lot of the challenges we face can be around, put my teeth in, interoperability.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
That's following on.
That's the one achievement done for today. But I think it is a challenge, like trying to get those flows. Any device that we have, it has a little file, SDP file. It's like its own version of self-ID. This is what I am, what format. It has to flow through all the media infrastructure. And when you go from product to product, whether you're using MMOS or DDS or whatever control mechanism, it sometimes doesn't flow through correctly, and you can get real challenges with that. I think that has caused us in certain things at various times. It's caused us some problems. I think we also have some challenges with trying to get PTP timing of certain things going through the network, especially when we go to end devices out in certain grounds and stuff like that. It has some challenges for us too. I'm trying to keep it non-2 tech.
That's good.
Yeah.
But you said interoperability.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it again.
You've already won. One of my dreams is to be able to automate this session. So next year I don't have to do it and somebody else can do it for me. What would you like to automate and why? That question is to number one. John, what would you like to be able to automate more of, and what's stopping you?
Yeah, so going a little bit back to the fridges and Yeah. And NEP, we have developed our own broadcast control platform. It's called TFC. And TFC does 4 things. It is controlling of IP equipment, it's monitoring, it's provisioning, and it's configuration. Those are the 4 things that we're doing inside TFC. And we're going to do a 5th thing, which is, I need to think about the name, but maybe it's provisioning of, new equipment that didn't exist yet. That sounds a little bit vague, but think about back to the fridge. It is that from TFC, we have the ability to, I need a vision mixer, and we're going to use, supplier ABC, doesn't matter, and we will create that resource, spin up, and use it for production, and when it's not needed anymore, we destroy it. And this is something that we're going to invest in, hopefully in the future, to build that whole ecosystem, so that we have this ecosystem where we can combine all those technologies together. And responding to Matt's fridge, because I know he has quite a significant fridge. It's with the playout and all the stuff that you're doing, it's very consistent use. So it's running all the time. So for you, it would be very interesting to capitalize those assets. If you're talking about the scaling up and the scaling down model, then OpEx becomes more interesting, because there it's okay, we need to use this. I boot this server in the data center. You can automate that, power off and then power on. Install the operating system of whatever type you need. Deploy your workload, don't need it anymore, destroy it. Similar like what the industries around us are doing, so OTT, etc., when they scale up the demand, think about Netflix. They're openly talking about this. They scale and they start all kind of virtual machines in Amazon, and if they don't need it anymore, they destroy it. But also, when they are deploying a new version of the software, an update, they don't go into systems, I'm going to update this, etc. No, they deploy the new code. If it's running okay, then they destroy the old versions, and that's how they are constantly recycling the things that they're using. So I think we as an industry can learn a lot from that. So this is a very long answer to a short question, but this is where...
Well, I was going to say I agree. We're working with a thing called software-defined live production, which is all about that. How do you industrialize that? Because I think what we find is with multiple teams across the world spinning up cloud-based production, PCRs. And so rather than doing it again and again and again, and everyone employing their own team of CI/CD, pipe builders, you kind of create a set of templates so you can fully automate that. Anyone in the world can decide, this is what I need, this is the PCR I need, this is the switcher I want, this is the audio ops I want, action replay I want, go. And that's good automation, right? And to have that ability to spin up and spin down is really key. But it's taking a lot of work to put that in place, which is kind of back to Rebecca's point, because I think we're not making it as easy as it needs to be.
Yeah. And we go back into the interoperability. Another nightmare.
Why is it not as easy? Why are we making it not as easy as it needs to be, do you think?
I think it's just a function of maturity. So I think the software that we're using is great, and it's getting better every year. But it's just we need to be thinking, how do we make this really? It's not just enough to have a fantastic software switcher in the cloud. It's got to be, how can I make it easy for my customers to effectively deploy this in an instant and take it down in an instant, and make it interoperable with everything else that needs to work with.
Absolutely. Tom, could you automate more things at IMG?
Yeah, I mean, we could. I think there's 2 sides of automation, isn't there? There's the production automation, which you see across like newsrooms and things like that, where you've got cameras doing their own thing and it all being run from a rundown, which we haven't navigated into too far. We've certainly looked at it, and there's some areas that might drive that, but ultimately it's all about finding that consistency, So if you've got loads of products and you're able to have a consistent output across multiple different outputs, it's really beneficial, and it does have some value. I think the other side of automation is sort of data-led. It's like here's a data set, it comes in, it does resource management, it does people booking, it does efficiencies through that side of the kind of the chain. So yes, we could do that, and we're definitely looking at it as an organisation, and it will be something that we'll continue to look at through the next few days.
Because you do some pretty big projects, right? the EFL project is one that I covered recently. That's a lot of football matches, for example. Are there any parts of that particular chain? The commentary you couldn't automate, for example. However, is there parts that you could?
So no, actually,
Yeah.
it's the automate within the EFL model itself. It's quite it's a traditional in that it's ENG cameras. They're all brought back. There's tallies and talkback sent back up to the grounds. It's read or simply live. It's done, and then it's sent out to certain platforms for certain broadcasters out on SRT.
The scale doesn't help, and that was my point, really.
No. I
1,000
mean,
games.
there are. Someone told me earlier. Pete told me 1,698 football matches in 9 months.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot, and the scale of that is enormous. I think one of the challenges you have with it is if it's not all right at the start, there's very little opportunity for testing and learning and bringing it down and restarting. So it's if you could extend the timelines to start late, it would be great, but you can't buy time, unfortunately.
Maybe there'll be a stand at IBC where you can. I'm going to jump in my time machine now. Those of you who are regular listeners to this show will know that I've done this panel for about the last 10 years. And about 10 years ago, I asked what our gold standard was going to be for Tier 1 production with sport. And it was all agreed that UHD, HDR was going to be the way forward. However, fast forward 10 years, there's been a number of significant sporting events this year where that has not been the case. And actually, I think Shane Warden's in the room made a very good point a year or two ago that HD 1080p HDR was probably going to be the way we go as an industry. As Ari sponsoring this session, I thought it might be prevalent just to very briefly touch on whether there are opinions amongst the panel as to which of these things is the right way to go.
Yeah, who goes first?
Oh, okay. I mean, hello, 2019. Basically, if you can capture it in a higher format, great. You can put it in an archive. You can keep it over there. I think the benefits of doing it in 1080p are there for everyone. It's easier to distribute. It's easier to consume, and there's very little visual impact for the consumer, which is why we do all this, right? So I think it's great to be able to do this stuff in the higher frame rates and the higher formats and the higher line resolutions. There was an argument that houses are getting smaller and televisions are getting bigger, so you're closer to your TV, so you might see the lines. You can't, not really. No, 1080 is fine. Progressive's great. There you go.
I think what can I say to add to that? I think we'll take contribution in any format. We'll take 1080p 50 or HDR, we'll take UHD. We'll work with the rights holder for the best choice. I think increasingly we're seeing 1080p 50 HDR as a kind of standard or an emergent standard for contribution, I think. So for us, I think P is important. Rebecca called out the importance of Max and D2C from a Warner Bros. Discovery perspective. We've got over 100 million subs now, so it's quite a big D2C play. So obviously progressive is super important, particularly in the D2C world. And then I think HDR is a true standout capability, right? As a sports fan, as a TV technologist, I'm a big fan of HDR, and I think capturing that is a must. So I think there's still significant advantages to our customers in that, and we can still distribute as UHD.
Thank you.
I think it's bang for buck is what it in the end comes down to, because just producing completely in UHD, it's way more expensive. And also, don't forget about the knock-on effect, because if you are streaming it, then that means that your encoding is going to be more expensive, but also your bandwidth is going to be, you're going to use way more bandwidth, because between a 1080p HDR that you would live stream on the internet versus a UHD HDR, bandwidth at least needs to go times 2, maybe even 2.5 times 3.
There are some. The interesting thing with the HDR piece for us, though, at IMG, is obviously we contribute a lot of signals from different broadcasters in, and then turn it around for world feed. It's a lot of what we do, and so we, there is obviously discrepancies across people's HDR formats. So one of our challenges is literally from an operational standpoint is making sure that we've got the right HDR down map, tone map to then bring it in and then have the consistent output, because that is its own version of interoperability, but it's hard work.
I did mention it to two very intelligent members of the audience earlier, and there wasn't quite a fist fight, but there was a passionate discussion. So I know there's a lot of strong feeling about it. But one of them did point out that compression standards are constantly evolving, and I think we may see that cost challenge evaporate over time. But let's see where we get to.
But with those newer standards, you can also bank on using those newer compression standards to lower your bandwidth on your 1080p. So then it becomes, are you saving cost or are you making the same cost to deliver more? And then, yeah.
Can I take that as a question?
And then the finance guys come in and, yeah.
Right, gents, time to put your money where your mouth is. Taking all of the above, most of the conversation into account. While you're walking the halls of the Rye over the next couple of days, this weekend, and you have your suitcase full of cash, or I guess more specifically, a pen to sign a subscription contract, what are you looking for? What do you think you'll find and why? We'll start with John.
First of all, I hope to see more vendors moving, towards the software world, which I just talked about. I also hope that there are new entrants in the market that can easier enter the market and deliver, new things that could be, beneficial and maybe disrupt, some of the things that we have going on. But also with thinking about, broadcast for, new tech people coming out of universities, very often it's not sexy, right? Because they see it a little bit as ancient technology. But, with things moving to standard software, things moving to cloud, things moving, et cetera, you will have new things and new models. So maybe, AI engines that work real time and can do, new stuff, basically. So I would say walk a little bit in, hall 8 and 9, on the sides a little bit, find a little tiny boost, maybe it's like, oh, that's great. And then, see what we can do with that.
I will do that. Matt, how will you spend the next couple of days?
Hoping my trainers stand up to the walking, first of all. I think, looking forward to lots of good conversations. I think we've got some really big refresh moments, so there's some big opportunities that we can share with some of the vendors. Don't get too excited, but that should be good conversations. Much like John, I think I'm really interested to see the sort of software development that we're across the different vendors and our partners. And then, look, as always, everyone walks the halls looking for that little piece of magic, right? A little provocation, the idea, the new AI solution that you haven't quite thought about yet. So let's hope we discover something. A gem.
Is there anything, so I didn't brief you on this, just quickly. Is there anything that's not out there that you wish you could have? Is there a dream that you're walking around the edges? Is there oh God, I wish there was a thing that did this? Do you see what I mean?
I don't think there is a silver bullet I'm looking for. I think there's my team and I are here, right? We've got a set of projects, a set of problems to solve, a set of opportunities to go after, right? And maybe in each one of those, there might be a little dream. I don't think there's a nirvana, and maybe there will be one day, TV station in the cloud, spin it up, there you go. But I think we're a little bit away from that yet. But maybe not. Maybe not that far.
I hope not. Tom, what are you looking for? What's on your agenda for the next couple of days?
I will be looking at vision mixes. I will be looking at SDNs.
Physical vision mixers, can I just ask?
I will be looking at vision mixes. Let's see what they've got out there.
Controversial.
I know. SDNs and MAMs.
For what?
For projects.
Tease us a bit more with what those.
I think the vision mixes, just to upgrade. I mean, a lot of our infrastructure is 1080/50i, so we'll be upgrading some of those things. MAMs, I think there's some really interesting stuff out there. It does move into the AI model, how you can plug in some of those things and search for content. It's got loads of use cases, obviously. And the SDN, really, our whole world at the moment is sat on red, blue, obviously, and spine leaf, but we kind of at the point now where we need to put an SDN on top so that we can manage it better.
Thank you. Keep an eye out for Tom around the halls. As we're massively over the programme today, I'm going to call this now. Unless anybody in the audience has got a question for the panel they'd like to throw out very quickly. No, they're all keen.
I actually had a very slow thought because I've not got the answer to your question.
Oh, brilliant. Go on.
I think what we're looking for is a complete software-based control room that can handle 20 to 30 languages in parallel. So we need to solve that parallel language challenge amongst other things.
Perfect. I will make sure I do that for you on behalf of the vendors. Please join me in thanking the panel for their time.
Thank you.